Hello, and thank you for joining us for a Westwood Trust Creative Chat. My name is Claire Williamson, and I'm Director of Education and Community Engagement at Society for the Performing Arts. To describe myself and my surroundings, I'm a white woman with long brown hair pulled back, dark rimmed glasses, and I'm wearing a blue sweater. There are some framed pictures on the white wall behind me. I am thrilled to be hosting this conversation today between Chris Thile and Craig Hauschildt. Chris Thile is a virtuoso mandolin player, a singer-songwriter, and a composer. He's a recipient of the MacArthur Genius Grant, a radio personality, and in addition to his solo work, he has performed as part of the acoustic trio Nickel Creek and progressive bluegrass quintet Punch Brothers. And he's also a dad. We are so excited to welcome Chris to Houston on February 5th for a performance at the Cullen Theater in the Wortham Center. Craig Hauschildt, who many of us in Houston know, is a percussionist, educator, and arts administrator. He is also a member of the local ensemble Loop 38, which was an awardee of SPA's Houston Artist Commissioning Project this past fall. You can hear more from Craig and learn more about Loop 38 in a creative chat filmed virtually with him and his collaborators on SPA's YouTube channel or wherever you're watching this video now. Before we delve into the conversation, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the many Indigenous communities that have long used and continue to use this land as a living and gathering space. SPA's offices in Jones Hall are located on ancestral land traversed by the Karankawa, Atakapa Ishak, Sana, Coahuiltecan, and Alabama Coushatta people. These Indigenous communities continue to be a driving force in shaping the culture and economy of our region. We acknowledge these communities to offer recognition and respect for their lived experience and to broaden awareness of the forces that have led to this moment. And it is now my pleasure to bring on Chris Thile and Craig Hauschildt. Welcome, Chris Thile and Craig Hauschildt. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. And Craig, I'll let you take it away with the questions.
All right. Well, welcome, Chris.
Hey,
I'd love
Craig.
to find out, how's life on the bus?
Life on the bus is pretty good. It's pretty good. Here's this is the back lounge. Punch Brothers. I'm touring with my band Punch Brothers right now. We're not the tidiest. We're not the tidiest crew of acoustic miscreants, but it's fun.
I like it. And where are you all right now?
We have a day off in Albuquerque. We didn't play here, and we're not about to. Although I wish we were. I love this town. But played in Scottsdale, Arizona last night, and then day after tomorrow we'll be in Oklahoma City.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, I guess let's just get started by talking about the upcoming concert. Like, what can the audience expect when they come to see you on February 5th?
Well, one, they can expect a very excited musician to be on stage. I know you're a performer as well, and so I'm sure you've experienced the kind of supercharged nature of mid-pandemic performance that we make. We've all, when you finally get to the concert hall, you're with an intrepid crew of music lovers who have decided that they are going to, come hell or high water, experience some live performance. And we all decide that now. And I think before, we could just sort of stumble into a concert hall. It's like, let's see some music. Why not? And that's a very different feeling from playing for a room full of human beings who have decided that despite everything going on, they're gonna mask up and get into a concert hall. And we're all obviously being as careful and safe as we possibly can, but life includes wonderful things that we share with each other, and live music is one of those things, thank God. And so I am so excited to get there and play music for y'all. You know, and beyond that, I play the mandolin, and so it's going to be a whole lot of mandolin and me singing and occasionally stomping my feet, and you know, there might be a hand clap. There's Chris Eldridge in the background, Punch Brothers guitar player, and a backpack thief. No, I think actually that was his backpack. I think it was his.
I love it. And will this be a show with the band, or will you be doing things off your solo album?
No, this is just me. This one is when we all hang in Houston. That's just going to be solo. I released a solo record last fall. Was it? When did it come out? Like last summer. I can't remember. Wow, it's been a heck of a year, Craig. Yeah, so it'll be off this solo record. It's the first actually solo record that I've made. Well, there was the Bach record that you were just talking about, a solo Bach record. But that's so different, right? When you're kind of interacting with even solo Bach, it really feels like it's at least a duo record because it's you and it's Bach. But then also, you know, you're interacting with the width and breadth of the people who have played that music before you, and that's a lot of people, you know. So it really, I feel like performing solo Bach is like being a part of the biggest band you've ever been in. You know, I'm interacting with what I'm seeing on the page, but then I'm also interacting with what I've heard from Heinrich Schering and Arthur Grumio and Hilary Hahn and James Ennis, and like anyone who's played that music. So this record, you know, there's a couple pieces that have been played before by other people, but largely it's music that I wrote for myself to play solo. And so it's a very different kind of a feeling. And I think one interesting thing about playing solo is that it forces you to look out into the audience for that sense of community that, you know, is one of music's noblest causes, I think, is to sort of deepen and broaden our sense of community. And it's tempting when you're on stage with other musicians to kind of only look left and right for that sense of community. You know, might be the boys and I are on tour right now. We live in this rolling tube together, and we step on stage, we sound check together, and we're honing in on this music together. And so when the actual curtain goes up, you might forget to look out at all of these new human beings that are, you know, potentially there in collaboration with you for the first time. Whereas when you're solo, you will never forget that, because you're looking for, all human beings, we're looking for human connection all the time. And so when the only hope of it for me, you know, as a solo performer, is with y'all in the audience, you know, it's easier to know, or it's just first instinct. It's like, here are more humans. Thank God I'm not alone. You know, I'm not just in my bedroom practicing this stuff, you know, kind of for myself. So I do really, I love being out with the band, of course. But I cherish not to get all cheesy or brown nosy about it, but I really do cherish, you know, that being compelled instantly to look for that human connection from the people I'm seeing in front of me, as opposed to side to side.
Beautifully said. I'm curious with this solo album. You know, I was watching some of the videos, and I saw that you were recording it in a church instead of like a studio. I'm curious, is there a backstory on why you picked that specific church, or what was going on in your mind?
I mean, well, okay, we all found ourselves in pretty bizarre circumstances as we were getting used to, you know, being a full-blown pandemic. But so my wife and I, sorry, your bud falling out. My wife and I, we were renovating in Brooklyn when all of this started going down, and so we were in a tiny little 1-bedroom, kind of waiting out our renovation, in our actual space, and we realized, it's like, oh my gosh, if we're gonna have to be literally inside a bunch, like us and our little boy, like, we're all gonna tear each other's heads off in here. And so I called a buddy of mine who had an extra place in Hudson, New York, which is 2.5 hours north of the city, and said, hey, dude, I bet you've gotten a lot of calls from people just like me, because a lot of New Yorkers were pretty freaked out. It was just nonstop sirens there initially when all of this was going down, and no one knew how to protect themselves from it. It was pretty hairy there, and a lot of people were sort of at least temporarily relocating. We were going to hang in the city had it not been for the tiny quarters. But so we did. He ended up renting us the place, and so we were up there for a while, and I caught wind from some musician friends that there was a studio in town that had been sort of coaxed out of this church, that someone bought this old Lutheran church and had converted it into a studio. And I there was the president of my record company, and now he's chairman emeritus, sort of stepped down from regular presidential duties, but he suggested that I make a record kind of with the religious impulse or God as its sort of binding theme, because he'd heard it's always been threatening to happen in all my lyrics. I was raised in a very fundamentalist Christian environment, and so that always seeps into my work, whether I wanted to or not. And so he said, man, just let it rip once. Just go ahead and let it rip. And then separately, he had come to a couple of artists on the None Such label saying, hey, it would be interesting if you just did sort of a record that was highly influenced by the pandemic, like your experience of it. And certainly for me, my experience of it, there was the craziness of a family all just sort of inside all the time and remote school and all that. And then those nights, I don't know about you, but there was a lot of sort of, late night existentialist, dread musing. And for me, that always takes, because of my upbringing, that always takes like the existential dread. Crises always take sort of a religious bent. That's always in there, despite the fact that I wouldn't characterize myself as particularly religious anymore. And so the record ended up really dealing with a lot of those issues. And so when I heard about that space, this converted Lutheran church, I thought, oh man, if this place sounds good, then it's the one. And I went in there and started playing and fell in love with it. And so being able to record the whole record there, was really special.
It's really beautiful, beautifully said. I'm curious. You have this like genre defining, quality to you. Part of genre is how you play it, the people who play it, the instruments you play, the audiences you play for, and the rooms, right? Like how different, I don't know how often you've gotten to do the show, the things from that album in big concert halls, but how can you talk about the differences between like performing that in a church, a converted studio, versus a concert hall? Like, is there a thing there for you?
It's funny for me, like concert halls feel like churches to me. So it's not that different. And you'll hear on some of this material the sort of the reverence that I have, and that I think a lot of us have for the live performance environment. I think it has replaced, or that I use it like a church service for myself, and then maybe there's an aspect of my show that is church service like, just in that I really feel like these are opportunities that when we ever since this all went down, I've been going to more live performance now that it's back. That I really, I think despite how much I love it, have been guilty of taking live performance for granted, both giving them and attending live performances. And I think that I get a lot of spiritual nourishment from that environment, and whether I'm on stage or in a seat, or standing, whatever it may be, that being kind of congregating with my fellow human beings in that anonymous way that a concert provides. It's very, very similar to a religious service of any kind. You go, and certainly there might be people there who know you, but that's not the point. You're not sitting down and asking another person, like, how was your day? How are you doing? How are the kids? You're coming there, and you might see someone and nod and thumbs up or whatever it is, but you're there to sort of experience a thing together. And for me on stage, it's the same. I'm there to experience something with you. I mean, I could hear myself play all this stuff in my bedroom if I wanted to, but I'm there to experience it with you as well, and see how it changes in your company. And so the concert hall is not so different than a converted church in Hudson or a rock club on the Lower East Side. They're very similar because it's human beings coming together to sort of share an experience.
Beautifully said. One of the audience, the folks who asked a question on Facebook, asked about how you've been keeping busy during the pandemic, and what's up next for you.
Yeah, well, I think a ton of musicians, especially before we kind of went back to being able to do concerts, it was, well, I think it depended on your pandemic depended on the sort of pressure that life has given to you. I mean, and there's a certain amount of pressure is a privilege. To have a family meant that I couldn't just sort of retreat, just take it as like a forced sabbatical, which I have friends who did that, and I have friends who like me, were just sort of on Zoom a whole lot, doing whatever it was, teaching master classes, doing things like we're doing right now, actually. This is now a kind of a familiar and comfortable setting, whereas at the beginning of the pandemic, it's like, what on earth are we doing right now? Is this okay? And now it feels as normal as giving like a pre-concert talk or I don't know, a meet and greet after the show. It feels pretty normal at this point. So out of keeping busy, I think I thought it was going to be tricky, but it wasn't. But oh my God, how nice it is to be back and where this is part of what we're doing instead of what we're doing.
Cool. And the second part of their question was about what's up next for you.
Oh, right.
Do you
What's up next?
have a project that you're excited about?
Yeah. There's right now Punch Brothers this is kind of a Punch Brothers focused year for me, in support of a record that we made called Hell on Church Street, which is a track by track reimagining of a record by a hero of ours, Tony Rice, called Church Street Blues. So we're doing that. Also, I'm recording with Sarah and Sean Watkins, my Nickel Creek bandmates. We're making another Nickel Creek record this year, and we'll be theoretically out touring next year. And always a lot of other stuff brewing. Potentially working on an orchestral project, and then some miscellaneous, more sort of under wraps things.
Got it. So I'm curious. You have a son, right?
I do, a little boy. Yeah.
Excellent. How old is he? 6.
6 years old.
Nice. My kids are 7 and 9, so
Nice.
I think we've had probably similar pandemic experiences.
Woo.
I'm curious. I open up or not as much as or as little as you want, but like, what have you learned from your 6-year, like raising your 6-year-old? Like, what are some of the takeaways from that, whether they roll over to the concert hall or not?
They absolutely do. The main thing is hoping that his ability to be present in a moment rubs off on me. Of course, children have, they are just as screen obsessed as we are, but we try and make sure that we he has a healthy relationship, certainly healthier than ours, with screens, and I notice that when he's in it, he's just so completely and totally in it, and reminds me to be in it. If he and I are in the middle of a pretend game or something like that, he can sense me wandering or kind of like dealing with some sort of a musical problem or logistical problem in the back of my head while what I'm really supposed to do is be for Baggins or something. I'll be like, daddy, and I'll remember, and I get better at it the more he coaches me, and so then I try and take that into the world with me, and particularly my musical life. Being present in a moment is extraordinarily valuable if you can shut off the rest of that and just be there. It'll help you in any number of ways. As an improvising musician, particularly there, being thoroughly present. The best improvisers I know are very, very good at shutting everything else off. All other possible moments are just not even considered, and only the moment in front of them. And so I think that being a dad has really helped me embrace the moment.
I'm curious. So, with your trio, you all knew each other as kids, right? I mean,
yes.
And what age would you say that you all kind of started doing this music thing as your form of like being together?
I was 7, so not much older than my boy. He'll turn 7 in May. So yeah, I was 7 when Sean and Sarah and I started Nickel Creek with my dad playing bass. So it was two siblings and then father and son, two families doing their thing together. And then when Nickel Creek took off, dad was like, I have two other kids and your mom, and I shouldn't be on the road at this point in my life.
Yeah. Do you like, I don't I'm trying to think of exactly how I want to phrase the question, but there's something really different about music making, I think, when you're 7 or 8 or 9 making it with your friends, and something very different when you're doing it professionally, right? How, and maybe you're not there yet, yours is 6 and you're just about there, but like, is there, like, how do you get that in your kids' lives, or do you, or
oh yeah,
how did
people ask me a lot, if they have kids that they suspect might be musical, what to do. And I only know from my own experience, as a kid, I think I'm just as mystified as any other parent is. Like, I do think Cal he's musical. He's a musical kid for sure. But he's also, my wife is an actor, and he's the boy lives to pretend. That from where I'm standing, I think that actually gets him more fired up than music does. And of course I'm sitting there as a musical parent, going like, oh man, his rhythm's good. He's got a good ear. It's like, I want him to do it. I want him to do it. It's so fun. Why doesn't he want to do it? And so, but I stopped myself. I don't think he experiences, that inward side of me, where I'm like, oh, if you just sit down and practice. Whereas for me, I think I heard mandolin for the first time when I was 2, and started begging my parents for one then. And it took them 3 years to realize that I was serious about it. Like I kept begging them for a mandolin, and there might also be a couple other things that I was begging them for at that time, but the mandolin was always consistent, and the other things were always changing. And it wasn't the mandolin itself. It was this guy at the pizza place that my parents started going every Saturday, and there was a person who he was the front man of a bluegrass band, and he played mandolin. Super charismatic guy, very good musician, but really charismatic. And I think I would have, if that dude had been a kazoo player or like a juggler, I would have wanted to be a kazoo player or a juggler. It was more about him than it was about the instrument or bluegrass. And so but I was as soon as I got a mandolin, I just wanted to be with the thing all the time. And my parents supplemented my interest with theirs. Like, they didn't exceed it, and they didn't undershoot it either. They matched me. Their instinct was to see where I was at with the thing and just match it exactly. And if I said I wanted to do something, to hold me to it, so I might say, yeah, I want to enter this contest, and they would go, okay, cool. And then, maybe the next day they'd be like, so you wanted to do that contest. If you want to do the contest, then you probably should practice. I'd be like, oh, right. Okay. And then, sit down, and the next thing 3 hours have passed and I haven't moved. So, but they didn't, they were never like tennis parents about it. It was always sort of, they would let me sort of provide the impetus, and then they would just hold me to the things that I said I wanted to do. So, my advice to fellow parents of potentially musical children is just make sure that they are in front of live music as much as possible. Like, to see human beings making that sound, it's so easy to have music on in your life now. That's a blessing and a curse, because, so with the width and breadth of the world's recorded music available to us at a Siri command, or like, Alexa, play this, that can devalue music. Obviously, it can make it available to us. We can consume it, which is beautiful, but also it can make it so easy to get that we treat it like wallpaper. And I think increasingly people's relationship with music is as with something in the background of their lives, that it ends up being kind of the soundtrack to their lives, and that can be a positive thing. And no knock against people who consume music in that way, but I do think that there's a lower percentage of music listeners out there who decide, like, I'm gonna sit down and listen to a record, and that's what I'm doing with my evening. You know what I mean? Like after dinner, I'm gonna clear the dishes, put the kid to bed, and what I'm going to do is sit down and listen to a record, make myself a cocktail and listen to the new X. I just don't see a lot of people or hear about a lot of people doing that anymore. That's something I love to do. And I make music to be consumed that way and not in the background. You know, my music sounds real weird in the background of a cocktail party. You know, it's just all over the deck. It just peaks and valleys and massive textural changes, and, you know, just musical whiplash. I'm a cagey musician, and I love cagey music. That's not the adjectival form of John Cage, by the way, although I do love John Cage's music. So for children, I think it's tempting to see this world where so much artistic content is available to them in finished form, that it can seem like a closed circuit, sort of epoxied, mysterious, complete thing, irreducibly complex. It is already there. It just was chicken or the egg, you know, with there it is. But how would you ever do it yourself? Because they don't ever see you know, often in a child's life, they have not seen it made. They just experience it done all the time, which is the danger of how much content is available to them at such a young age. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice is get out and see live music with your kids. And so find open mics and you know, like I'm so lucky that pizza place, like live, very serious music being made in a pizza place where lots of kids just like me just bouncing off the walls and playing video games, and you know, they might be in the middle of like Long Black Veil, this really intense murder ballad, you know, and all of a sudden it's like, order number 23, your pizza's ready, you know, like in the middle. So you can't disrupt it as a child. You know, no one's going to be like, shh. It's all for everyone. And so, but like not for kids. And I think that, you know, at least for me, I was really sensitive to being condescended to. And I think a lot of children's concerts can be great. It can be great for some kids. And for some kids, it's just going to be like, oh, come on. Like, I know this isn't the real thing. Like, give me the real thing. But like, also you're still a kid. So you might not act like an adult concert goer. So I think it's really important to and to take some risks as a parent. Like, you know, try to bring your kid to something that maybe, you know, maybe they would get shushed and maybe you'll have to leave, but also maybe not. Like, it might be, you know, like, take your kid to my show and see how it goes. Like, I won't be pissed off if they make a scene. It'll be fine. It'll be totally fine. You know, it'll be a moment that everyone has. The only thing that's a bummer is, you know, sometimes people, you know, sometimes a kid might not be feeling it, and the parents really like, no, we're going to do this. You know, like at a certain point, it can get tough for your fellow you just don't want to ruin it for your fellow concert goers. But everyone will understand if it doesn't work and you have to bail. So that would be my big thing. And I do think, man, there's nothing that means more to me than trying to get kids in front of live music so that they see how it works. And, you know, it doesn't have to be acoustic music. Like, take them to a DJ set, like whatever it is that gets them, that lights them, and see that people ultimately have to make that music too. You know, it gets made. Just anything to show kids that they are are a part of the beautiful things that are being made. It's not just consumers of the beautiful things.
Sounds great. I love it. I'll kind of wrap up. Is there anything in particular you're excited about seeing in Houston or doing in Houston?
Yes.
Before?
Oh, there is. I'm a massive Rothko fan, and so of course the Rothko Chapel is, it's Mecca for a Rothko fan. And actually, the chapel is part of what turned me into a massive Rothko fan. I had my first, certainly I love going to museums. It's one of the things that just charges the battery, way up to the point where I like kind of explode out of a museum and run to the mandolin. But I had that sort of classic relationship with Rothko where I go and I was like, I could do that. And then until one day I didn't. I stood in front of one and like had to choke back tears for something that just hit me in a different way all of a sudden. And then it was any of those color field paintings of his. I would just sit in front of them and kind of lose it, and I, have to deal with. They're actually, my record. My dearest hope would be that it dredges up some of the stuff that a Rothko dredges up for me. And so getting to go to the De Menil, that's what it's called, right? The De Menil,
the Menil collection and the Rothko Chapel are next to each other.
Yeah. And someone took me to the chapel and just looking up at, and I heard it's been recently sort of redone a little bit. So yes, we're gonna take a little detour pre-sound check. I'm gonna try and Omicron willing, if it can be done safely so that it's not increasing anyone's risk at the show, then I'm gonna go at least try and get 20 minutes in there. To look up at those incredible canvases.
Sounds good. And welcome back, Claire.
Thanks so much, both of you. That was just such a wonderful conversation. I was sitting on the other side, just like I spent like the whole time just leaning forward, listening to you guys talk. So it was so wonderful. And we're so excited to have you in Houston. And definitely the Rothko is like wonderful place to visit. Amazing. Yeah, I think it was one of the first places I went to when I was visiting Houston before moving here, and it like really sold me on the city. It just was like such a wonderful asset.
Totally. Oh God, it's any city in the world would be lucky to have it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all we have time for today. Thank you to everyone for joining us virtually, for engaging with us during this conversation, and a huge thank you to our program sponsor, Westwood Trust. Big thanks to Chris for making time to be here with us this afternoon, and thank you to Craig for being such a great interviewer.
Yeah, thanks, Craig.
Yeah, and make sure everyone watching to save the date for an evening with Chris Thile on February 5th at 7:30 p.m. in the Cullen Theater at the Wortham Center. Tickets are available on our website in the link below this video. We'll see you all then.
Bye.